are listening to
Thoroughly Kinky.
Thoroughly Kinky.
Thoroughly Kinky.
Thoroughly Kinky.
Thoroughly Kinky.
With your hosts, Liam and Adam.
Blazing on a sunny afternoon.
Alright, okay, it's time for a brand new episode of Thoroughly Kinky.
Thoroughly Kinky, yeah.
This episode's going to be a really special one because you've told me this is your favourite Kinks album?
Yeah, this is the fourth album called Face to Face, and weirdly enough, it's the first album I ever bought.
But wait a minute, you're not that old. How could you have bought this as your first album?
You'd think I'd made it up, but I only really got into music when I was 15, and then I really got into the Beatles and the Kinks and Bob Dylan, zeroed in on that, and then for my 16th birthday, I got a CD player, and I got 3 albums. I got Sgt. Pepper's, Face to Face, and Village Green by the Kinks. But when I first put this album on my 16th birthday, I was like, boom, this is as good as I thought it would be.
Right. Well, I, on the other hand, my first listen to this album was just in the last week, in preparation for this ep. This is where I feel like it's really clicked with me. All the songs I like in one way or another, so I feel like we finally arrived in Kinksville.
Totally. Before we begin on the track by track, shall we discuss the album cover? Because I know you already said you don't like it very much.
We're talking about this one, which is very colourful, cartoonish looking figure on the front, and the top of his head is chopped off, like he's been lobotomized, face to face, Kinks, and out of his head is flying colourful butterflies and flowers.
Yeah, but you think that's kind of ugly, yeah?
It is sort of ugly. There's too much white there. It's watercolours. I think that the visual elements don't combine very well.
I think it really reflects the album quite well because it's such an explosion of ideas compared to what came before. Boom, I've got all these ideas, these butterflies coming out of my head. I can rethink what an album is. I can rethink what a song is. And suddenly I've got all these mad ideas coming out of my head. That's what it says to me.
No, I like that. I see that. And it definitely does represent the album in that respect.
Bit of background before we begin. Most of this was written by Ray after he had a nervous breakdown. And he temporarily left the Kinks. And he was confined to bed for several weeks. He was listening to nothing but Bach, Frank Sinatra, Bob Dylan, and what was the other one? Glenn Miller. So
a bundle of different stuff there.
I think the key influence is Dylan, and not because it sounds that much like Dylan, but to me it was like, really with this album, he was like, well, I can write about anything. You know, now I can write lyrics about anything to do with British society or anything I could observe.
Right.
And to me, this album's like the sandbox for that. It's like, no longer have to write, songs within other people's frameworks. I'll just use, this to write about anything, sort of almost like novelistic short story songs,
That's really well represented in the first track of the album, which seems to be set in the life of a politician.
Ah, interesting.
And his lines being watched over, been bugged or something. Secret lines to the Kremlin or...
Wow! Do you know that's an interpretation... That's an interpretation I have never really had. So I'm learning something here. Shall we just go for the first track then, since you've already mentioned it now?
The first track is...
Party Line, yeah.
Hello, who's that speaking, please?
I'm on a party line, wondering all the time who's on the other end. Is she big? Is she small? Is she a she at all? Who's on my party line? Wish I had a more direct connection. This party line was here when I arrived, and I'm not voting in the next election. If they don't do something about finding out the person who is on my party line.
Yeah, I get a sort of story from this politician. He's paranoid. He doesn't know who's listening in on his line. What was your interpretation of this, Adam?
Well, it's a weird thing because I've just been going on about how Ray had this massive creative explosion during this. The entire album's written by him, except for this first track, because it's mainly a Dave song.
Oh, right. Starting off with a Dave song. Well, I really like it, actually.
From Dave's starting point, all it was Party Line was if you were poor or you lived in a block of flats, there was only one telephone line in, so you could listen in to other people's conversations.
Oh, right.
By lifting up your telephone, and if someone else was on the line. what might have happened is that Gray helped finish it. There is the political, he says, I'm not voting in the next election, so it's definite double entendre there on, because party line can also mean following the political party line.
Yeah.
The step I didn't make after that is the one you said, was it could be about a politician having to hide whatever, scandals or stuff like that, is also a valid interpretation,
Cold War, so I kind of thought, maybe there's some sort of like a current of political intrigue going through this.
Yeah. Totally. When my dad first heard this, he said it was like a lost Beatles song. I think it's incredibly mid-period Beatles-esque. It's very brisk and breezy. It reminds me of I've Just Seen a Face, maybe is the closest one. It's got that sort of very sort of 60s brisk, jumping out of a street sidewalk, sideways kind of like 60s carefreeness.
I hear that, yeah. It really starts the album off with a bang.
It's such an exciting, strong opening. And the last thing I should say about it is it opens with the telephone noise.
Hello, who's that speaking, please?
Apparently, originally, the original version of this album, as originally conceptualised, was meant to have sound effects linking every single track.
Oh, okay.
The boss of Pye Records, I think they thought it was too confusing or too high concept.
This album has a great variety. I really like the transition here between this really energetic first track and the second track.
Yeah.
Next we have Rosy, Won't You Please Come Home?
Rosy, won't you please come home? Since you joined the upper classes, you don't know us anymore. Live and let your troubles pass. Rosy, Rosy, where and tell me if you don't want to come back. I will sacrifice all I have to have a happy home once more. Rosy, won't you please come home?
What a great track.
Yeah.
So much to talk about with this one.
Yeah.
Great chord progressions. It's got this cool fuzz sound on the guitar. Where to start, Adam?
It sounds like it's about romantic interest. It was actually written about Ray's sister, who had emigrated to Australia.
Well, that explains the second line, Mama, don't know where you been.
Yeah, and your room's clean, no one's in it, I agree, it's like really great descending chord sequence, I think it is. Yeah.
Got this kind of, descending feel.
Yeah. And I love the harpsichord on this, which is Nicky Hopkins, the session guy, joining him in the studio. That extra flavour really defines this album to me. It's kind of like the album's still kind of quite garage rock, but it's got all these harpsichord and keyboard flavours over it, which really give it a really unique sound. And this is a really good example of that,
Right, yeah. It's like one new element we definitely haven't heard yet.
Yeah, it's a really, really great second track as a sort of, after the brisk, opener, you've got this sort of something a bit more portentous. It's got this sort of sweeping dramatism to it.
We're in total agreement so far. What's going on next? Next track is...
Dandy, yeah.
They long for dandy, dandy, chatting up the ladies, tickling the fancy, pouring out your charm to meet your own demands and turn it off at will. Oh, they long for dandy, dandy, knocking on the back door, climbing through the window. Hubby's gone away, and while the cat's away, the mice are gonna play. Oh, you low down dandy.
What a great track. I feel like I'm going to be too effusive in this episode because I can't really overstate how much I have enjoyed this album.
Wow.
In comparison, even with good albums we've heard so far, really I've just enjoyed every track. And this is a great one. It gets stuck in your head, and the lyrics to it pay off on repeated listens.
Yeah. It's very swinging London. Obviously, it's about a promiscuous young man. And then the sort of punchline is, you can't do that forever or you'll end up a bit of a sad act, I guess. It gives it a bit more depth.
It's asking, well, where's this going for this character?
Yeah.
You can't escape the past. Look around you and you see the people settle down.
Yeah.
And when you're old and grey, you'll remember what they said. 2 girls too many, 3's a crowd, and 4 you're dead.
Oh, that's a great line, yeah. I mean, there's an interpretation that this is Ray writing about his brother Dave, because at the time Ray was married, and at the time Dave was very putting it about. This wasn't a single. It was meant to be a single, but then, do you know the band Herman's Hermits?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were a sort of teeny pop band of the time. They brought out as a single in America and it was a big hit. So the Kinks single version of this got cancelled because it had already been a hit by another band.
They long for dandy, dandy, chatting up the ladies, tickling the fancy, pouring out your charms to meet your own demands, and you turn it off at will. Ho ho, they long for dandy.
Dandy. Well, we're fans, obviously, but there's a lot of quality on this album. So, Adam, what's up next?
Too Much on My Mind.
I'm thinking all the time, there's too much on my mind. It seems there's more to life than just to live it. There's too much on my mind, and there is nothing I can say. There's too much on my mind, and there is nothing I can do about it. About it. My thoughts just weigh me down.
So that was Too Much on My Mind, a pensive track.
Yeah.
It's a song about being lost in thought.
Yeah.
And you got that great harpsichord coming back in heavily on this track, which I really appreciate.
I love this track. This is one that just grows the more you hear it, and it's probably written when he was a bit down and depressed when he was in that phase. And it's such a soaring chorus. Love the sort of yawning panoramic sort of place the chorus takes you to.
Yeah, that expansive feeling when it launches into the chorus with this great C-sharp minor chord. There's too much on my mind, and there's nothing I can say. I really like that bit. Let's move on now. What's next, Adam?
Next one's called Session Man.
A session man playing at a different studio every day. He reads the dots and plays each line, and always finishes on time. No overtime, no favors done. He's a session man, a chord progression, a top musician. He's not paid to think, just play. A session man, a session man.
So, a session man. Clearly written for one of their musician pals who played session music for them. And this might be one of my favourites on the album.
I'm glad you say that. The tune of this one weaves around so much. There's not many sections that repeat, even though it's a really short song. There's a lot of like different little bits in it. It's not verse, chorus exactly, is it?
In the middle of it, there's this great bit. It goes, he's not paid to think, just play.
Playing at a different studio every day, which I think is amazing. I mean, this was written apparently about Nicky Hopkins, who is such a strong presence on this album.
Oh, right. And of course, the song begins with like a real flurry of harpsichord.
Some of the lines are a bit nasty. The line when he says, "No overtime or favours done." Well, I don't know if he really owes you anything. It seems a bit like like because the guy's playing on the session, he should be doing favours for no money. It's like it's a bit nasty, the lyric. I think it gets away with it because it's such a likeable pop song.
Yeah, I get the vibe from it that it's making fun of someone in only a way that good friends can.
Well, Nicky Hopkins played in all the records between 65 and 68. Apparently, they didn't end on good terms because he left because on the Village Green album, he claimed that he played a lot on that and he didn't get the credit he deserved. So eventually they did kind of fall out. But I think during this period, it would have come across as well-meaning because he did play on this record and continued to for a couple more years. In fact, there's a film about Nicky Hopkins, came out this year or maybe about to come out, and it's called Session Man.
Ah, okay, a real left turn next. What's the next track on the first side, Adam?
Next one is Rainy Day in June.
the cherished things are perishing and buried in their tomb. There is no hope, no reasoning, this rainy day in June. Everybody felt the rain. Everybody felt the rain. Everybody felt the rain. Everybody felt the rain.
So that's Rainy Day in June. The Kinks doing Led Zeppelin or something.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I got to be honest, it's not a favourite of mine, but I appreciate what it's trying to do. The lyric of this one is all apocalyptic and almost fantasy style. It's kind of like they're trying to do a heavy metal themed song, but the musical vocabulary to express that doesn't exist yet.
Misty shadows, faded in gloom.
Yeah.
The eagle spread its mighty wings. It's almost a little bit Spinal Tap-esque at parts.
Yes, but that's the weird thing, because that sort of the cliche of the heavy metal band writing about those sort of subjects didn't exist by this point. It's kind of a stab in the dark for rock territory that wasn't actually mapped out yet. So I appreciate it for that, but musically it doesn't totally come together for me, because it's a bit, ominous sounding beginning, but then the chorus is a bit, I don't know, I don't love the chorus. It's a bit kind of...
I think I disagree with you. I really like this one, and I think that chant gets under your skin, and those sound effects they're using, they really add a lot to the atmosphere and show an experimental side to the Kinks.
Well, that's good, because I'll let you run this one then, because I think it's good. A lot of people really like this one. This is just, I've never totally got it, but I do appreciate what it's aiming for and how it's very different for the time,
Okay, we've made it to the final track of side one.
It's called House in the Country.
When he got his job, when drunken daddy tumbled down the stairs. From that very day, this boy was more than happy to share. One of these days, I'm gonna knock him off his song, 'cause he's got a house in the country and a big sports car. He's got a house in the country and a big sports car, and he's also smug. Oh yeah.
Really good, classic
Yeah.
Kinks, got real charisma. It's got a funny story to the lyrics.
Musically, it's probably not doing anything new, but it's just so old-fashioned. It's almost like Chuck Berry, sort of. What he's bringing to the table is he's got a totally English-style lyric that Chuck Berry wouldn't have come up with, because Chuck Berry wrote about Americana, and he's writing about what it's like. It's just a sort of English toff who, was born with a spoon in his mouth and just didn't have to work for anything. And you can really hear that kind of working-class boy resentment coming through,
He got his job when drunken daddy tumbled down the stairs. There's no sympathy for drunken daddy here.
I love that line. It's so funny. It's so dark, that line, when drunken daddy tumbled down the stairs. I love the way he sort of like elongates. He's also smug. It's like... and I love the guitar solo as well. It's not exactly reinventing the wheel, but it's just a great, carefree sounding, funny, joyful sounding guitar solo,
We've been bursting through these tracks. We still haven't really talked about the band and where they are at this point. Of course, Ray Davies' nervous breakdown. What was the state of the band and their fame? Bigger than it ever was, right?
Well, yeah, they were doing pretty well, apart from the fact they were still banned from the US. They had a few personnel problems this year, because they had two situations where members were replaced for a while, because when Ray had his breakdown, they went on tour with a stand-in called Mick Grace, who just stood there and played rhythm guitar and hoped no one would look at him, because... And there's a story of them playing Belgium, and Dave took all the lead vocals. They just had this other guy in who was just the fourth guy who just pretended no one would notice him, and that was his job. And the story of them playing Belgium, a sort of guy in the front row of the audience grabs Dave and says, "Hey, Dave, he's not Ray." Like he didn't know that, Not long after that, when Ray came to the back, then the bass player, Pete Quaife, was in a car accident and had to leave the band for what ended up being 6 months.
Oh.
They got a replacement in called John Dalton, who filled in for 6 months. In the meantime, Peter Quaife had decided to leave the band permanently. They said, okay, John, you're a full member of the band. Pete Quaife then changed his mind, and so John Dalton was unceremoniously kicked out, and Pete Quaife reinstated at the end of the year. Now, you're saying, were they doing well? Okay, there was these personality difficulties. They did have the third and final number one during this period, which is Sunny Afternoon, which we'll come up to.
We're going to get onto that.
It was allegedly number one when England won the World Cup. So that was obviously a very successful sort of time for them in terms of England swings, and we've got the number one record.
Right.
So they were still riding the crest of a wave, having a lot of success, but there was some serious, with Ray's breakdown, bass player Peter Quaife being out of action or not wanting to be the band for 6 months, there was a lot of still continued personnel difficulties like there had been the year before.
So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Exactly, yeah.
How does the second side of Face to Face open, Adam?
Starts with Holiday in Waikiki.
I won a competition in the liquor column in my local paper. So I packed my bags and flew across the sea all on my local paper. I sailed to Hawaii in the USA. I'm just an English boy, what a holiday in Waikiki. I didn't realize it was commercialized when I packed my things in. Because the genuine Hawaii ukulele cost me 30 guineas. And even when I'm swimming, I have to pay. I'm just an English boy, what a holiday in Waikiki.
Okay, Holiday in Waikiki.
It's quite ahead of its time. It's talking about globalization, isn't it?
Oh, I hadn't considered that angle.
It's all about the experience of Waikiki is totally, an illusion.
Set up for tourists.
Yeah. And it was inspired by when they visited Waikiki on the first US tour, and apparently he just found it was, plastic grass skirts, etc. It was, obviously incredibly commercialised. Even back then, I mean, it can only have got intensified in the nearly 60 years since. Like you say, it's not going to be no one's favourite track, but it's just a great rollicking rock and roll number with an interesting, original, funny, sharp lyric that just makes you love the band.
Okay, so the second track of side 2 is Most Exclusive Residence for Sale.
Spent all the money that he had. Had a heart and not a head. He spent it all on girls and fancy jewelry. And he found himself in front of a judge and jury. And the judge said to pay up or you must sell out. Most exclusive residence for sale.
All right. I'm a pushover for any song with those type backing vocals.
I love this one. Again, it's very lyrically focused. It's a kind of rise and fall thing, isn't it? Or it's this kind of Rake's Progress thing of like this guy who's got it all and then loses it all. You can't help but enjoy his downfall in a way, I love the way the lyric flows in this one. I love it. It's very cinematic. You can picture everything, I think. I love the line where it goes, and he found himself in front of a judge and jury. And then the next line is, and the judge says to pay up. You can just see it's almost like a pan out.
The song title is almost like scene 1, house for sale.
Exactly, yeah.
We get the backstory there, the tender.
Yeah.
He's meeting all the right people and he's spending a lot of money in the process. Next comes his downfall, and that's the explanation for the house being on sale.
Totally, yeah. I just love the flow of it. Some people do say this, House in the Country and Sunny Afternoon are about the same character. It's all about someone with a big house who loses it all.
Yeah, this could have been like half of a musical.
Yeah. You put in a different order, though, because it would really go House in the Country, Sunny Afternoon, then Most Exclusive. So I don't know if it was intended that way, but there's a bit of conceptual continuity throughout the album there.
Is this album considered to be a proto-concept album?
Well, I think it's a thwarted concept album because it was meant to be all linked by sound effects, but then that got reduced, and it got kind of compromised into a bit more of a normal album, even though it still got a lot of, experimental stuff. And also the album was delayed by several months, I think, because they had a publishing rights dispute. So it came out in October 1966, but it was actually, I think, all recorded by July. Even just a few months make a big difference in the 60s, and I think because it came out sort of late October, didn't land the same way, and this wasn't a huge hit as an album. It only got to number 12. No one was really thinking, have you heard the new Kinks album? It just was kind of received as another album at the time.
Right. Definitely fits into the mould of Pet Sounds or Revolver, which are both experimental albums. Both those bands are gearing up for their masterpiece that would be next year.
Yeah.
Looking forward, did the Kinks have that same sense that they were having to release their magnum opus?
Village Green, which is 68, is considered to be their magnum opus by most people. A year after Sgt. Pepper, that's the kind of one where they were focused on it as this is our big album statement. The album next year is something else. It's a really good album, but it's not, they didn't even consider it that themselves,
It seems to be like a running theme here in the story of the Kinks that as great as they are, they always felt themselves chasing after the fame that was accorded to their contemporaries.
Yeah, this could have been a very early influential concept album, but it didn't quite work out that way, unfortunately, yeah.
Well, we kind of talked around that track, but we both really like it. Most exclusive residence for sale. What's up next? Track 3 of side 2, Adam.
Fancy.
Fancy, just look around thee, if you will fancy all the girls you see.
It reminds me a bit of Rainy Day in June. It seems very timeless to me.
Yeah, it's in the mould of the Indian-influenced drone songs that they pioneered with See My Friends.
Yeah, See My Friends, yeah. I completely forgot about that track, but yeah, definitely in that mould.
And George Harrison was coming out with things like Love You Too by this point, but the difference is that had actual Indian instrumentation on it, whereas this is just doing it with a 4-piece band, and it's obviously this kind of repetitive drone thing, mainly on one note, isn't it? The lyric is really strange. It's kind of about unknowability, and for me this works better than Rainy Day in June because it is unknowably strange and talking about something that's inexpressible.
What's next, Adam?
Little Miss Queen of Darkness.
There was something missing from her carefree little life, and she'll never understand you when you're kissing her goodnight. 'Cause the only boy she had went and coolly stepped aside, and little Miss Queen of Darkness might as well have died. Little Miss Queen of Darkness.
I mean, Ray, certainly in the next few albums, he writes about female characters a lot, not necessarily in this sort of othering, objectifying way that most rock writers of the 60s tended to by default. He writes a surprising amount of songs from a female perspective. It's all right, but I don't think it's one of the stronger songs in the album. It does have a distinction. I think maybe had the only Kinks drum solo on any of their records.
Yeah, well, not half bad as drum solos go.
Like, if it was a film, that would be the break where you'd see her dancing, I guess. I guess that's what that's supposed to evoke.
Well, there's that cinematic eye that we've mentioned once or twice already, and yeah.
Yeah, it's all right, but I think the problem with this one is, in the sequence in the album, I will admit it kind of dribbles away at the end. Should come in between stronger numbers, or in a way, but it kind of is a bit lost. I don't know.
Right, I see what you mean. I mean, we've still got Sunny Afternoon coming, but the second side, I'm less enthusiastic about than the first side.
Yeah.
All right, okay, well, let's plow on. After Little Miss Queen of Darkness, what have we got, Adam?
We've got You're Looking Fine.
You're looking fine.
I'd say this probably is the worst track on the album.
I definitely agree. It's the sort of thing you can imagine it's been bawled by someone at a strip bar after the 10th pint or something. I don't know.
It's got a sleazy feel to it that I don't like. Yeah, you're looking fine.
I should say it's sung by Dave, although it's written by Ray apparently. And the riff is kind of like a slowed down version of Money by Barrett Strong, which the Beatles did. Also sounds a bit like Hey Bulldog, which the Beatles did later on. Dun, 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 dun,
You're looking fine. You're looking fine.
Both Money by Barrett Strong and the Beatles' Hey Bulldog, they have a lot of pep. They really swing or whatever, but this just is sluggish. It sounds drunken. It sounds like someone after quite a few pints falling about a strip bar. It does.
Right.
But they played "You're Looking Fine" at nearly every gig between 1966 and 1974. Like it was a
What is that?
anthem. It must have worked live somehow.
But I do love the next track,
Yeah.
and I'm not alone. It's one of their most popular songs.
It is "Sunny Afternoon."
The taxman's taken all my dough and left me in my stately home, blazing on a sunny afternoon. And I can't sail my yacht, he's taken everything I got. All I've got's this sunny afternoon.
It's a great song,
Yeah.
and every time you listen to it, you hear a new aspect of it. It's great for me as a newbie to kind of see the context of this song, and
Yeah.
it fits in really well with the stuff we've been talking about, the qualities we've been talking about in this episode in general.
Yeah. Oh, this might be my favourite single of all time. It is so magical.
Your favourite song of all time?
This is definitely up there. It's just the magical levels this works on. It sounds really like a 1930s standard. It always makes me think of like 1930s Betty Boop cartoons, Porgy and Bess. It's about another song about a toff getting the house repossessed, I think, because they'd run out of money. It works on another level to me. It's just this very sort of Depression era cool to it, sort of timeless standard sort of cool to it. I mean, that bass line is absolutely sick. Yeah.
It keeps on going.
Yeah.
It just gets me absolutely every time.
Yeah. So evocative, this sort of... I mean, Summer Records, I guess they were big in the 60s. There was a lot of them. It's got that sort of Depression era darkness to it.
It's a downer of a summer tune.
Yeah. Apparently Jim Morrison was a big fan of the song, which makes sense. It's kind of got that dark edge to it that the Doors sort of mind a lot. His vocal is, I don't know if you noticed this just there, his vocal's very kind of mournful sounding. It's English bluesy wail, from the heart, It does sound like almost like a sort of mysterious blues singer.
My girlfriend's run up with my car and gone back to her ma and pa, telling tales of drunkenness and cruelty.
All right, okay, so Sunny Afternoon, absolute classic. You said it got into the top 10. It was their last top 10, you said.
It was their last number one in the UK.
Number one, sorry, yeah.
It was the last number one in the UK. It was the last hit in the US for a long time, so it was definitely recognised in its time.
So that was the penultimate song on this album. What are we going to close it out with, Adam?
The last track number 14, which is I'll Remember.
I remember everything you said to me. Thinking about it now, just what might have been. Thinking about it now, things will never be the same. But I remember everything you said to me.
I mean, the first thing to say about this one is this is an outtake from the last album, which is like bonkers. Why would they do that? You know, this is an outtake from Kink Controversy. Kind of like it as a song. I even kind of like it. I've learned to love it in the context of the album because it's almost like, to me, it's almost like Sunny Afternoon's the real ending song, and then this is a kind of credit sequence type track. That's how I take it.
Yeah.
I actually think the song's a lot better than a lot of the stuff that was on Controversy, but to include it as the closing track on your 1966 album is very short-sighted, and I don't know why they did it.
It's a bit of a clunker, isn't it? And it's a pity it gets this final track spot.
It's a very disappointing ending, even though it kind of works because it's like, I'll remember, so it's like, remember this album, remember us. But considering what you've just been through, it's a bit, that's it, It's, it's a shame.
It's a pity we have to end on this damp note because our overall impression is this is new ground for the Kinks while retaining everything about the Kinks I've really enjoyed so far.
You've only got good stuff to come for a long time.
Great. How would you sum up this album, Adam?
I mean, I compare, if you want to do the Beatles comparison, to me, Rubber Soul and Controversy came out at the same time. There's no comparison. Rubber Soul is like so much more complex album than Controversy, whereas Face to Face, Revolver, to me, they're equals. To me, they're doing things that the other one doesn't do. They're similar. The Kinks have totally caught up. It's ground zero for the Kinks as they would become, so it's a very important album from that point of view.
Okay, so we've done it. That was Face to Face from 1966.
Yep.
And next it'll be something else. We'll skip the bonus tracks for now, but we will track down these bonus tracks from Face to Face the episode after.
Excellent.
Okay, Adam. Really enjoyed it as always, and look forward to doing it next time.
Excellent. Thanks for listening to this episode of Thoroughly Kinky.
If you'd like to send us an email, we'd love to hear from you.
Write to us at thoroughlykinky@gmail.com.
You can follow us on social media too.
You'll find all the links in the description. So that's all from us.
See you next time on
Thoroughly
Kinky.
Kinky.